Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Top Agent Nation Commercial Wednesday. This is actually one of my favorite topics, subjects, parts of real estate, which is business brokerage, and why this is so important. You know, one thing that I learned about business brokerage, and I didn't even know it was business brokerage when I was expanding my brokerage company, and I kept on buying property management companies. I'm like, wow, that's business brokerage, right? To look at a P&L, to understand how the business works. And I kept on just buying different business. Also, when you start investing in businesses, like in real estate, I bought into bars, restaurants, nightclubs, you name it. I started buying into it, but that's business brokerage. And the biggest thing for agents, what I learned running other trade organizations is I know when I was working with somebody, they were saying, well, you're getting a lot of referrals. And I'm like, where are the referrals? They're like, well, it's a dry cleaner, it's a nail shop, it's a liquor store, it's a gas station. And I'm like, who's getting all these leads? And he says, well, these business brokers. And I said, well, why don't we have any more business brokers? Why do we only have two or three? They're like, well, I don't think they're telling anyone about it so they can constantly get the leads. But this is the biggest thing, you know, if you're looking at doing residential, but then doing commercial deals, business brokerage is something you do need to know because you do come across it all the time. And I am really excited to share with a bunch of experts. And I would just first start with Tawnya Gilreath. You've been here forever, and it's great to have you back to kind of share your background. And I know you know, you have a great story, and also your background volunteering, plugging in. So if you don't mind, Tawnya, just sharing a little story about yourself.
Sure. I started selling businesses back in 2006, bought a franchise, a business broker franchise. And then, of course, we got things rolling. We were doing really well. And then Lehman Brothers exploded in 2008. And all the money dried up. All the SBA lenders stopped lending. And so in 2009. So anyhow, you know, I separated from the franchise in 2011 and have been selling businesses on my own for a long time, had a small team built. Back in 2009, interesting thing happened. I had a situation with an attorney that blew up a deal, and I couldn't really communicate very well with him because I didn't understand law very well. So I ended up going back to law school, or going back to school to go to law school, got my law degree and all that. So now I'm an attorney. I am an M&A advisor. My passion is selling businesses. Lower middle market companies is my favorite. Manufacturing, professional service firms are the sectors that I really like the best. And I joined with eXp Commercial in 2021, in March of 2021. I am a business broker mentor, and you know, I have a passion for education and for helping others to try to learn the trade. And business brokerage can be very complicated, and there's a lot of personalities involved in all of that. And so, but it's fun. It's a great career. I love it, and I love working with other business brokers, mentoring them, helping them to achieve their goals.
Tawnya, thank you so much. And thank you for seeing the vision, because I know it's unusual for a real estate firm to add business brokerage, but it's just through the background that I had. I said, you know what, this is a really interesting piece. And I called it the three legs of the stool when you had the commercial, the leasing, and the business brokerage. You kind of have it all because they all work together. So Tawnya, thank you so much. I'm going to add another extra guest. Nick, I didn't know you were going to be here. I thought you couldn't come up, but Nick, if you don't mind popping in, and we'll add more business brokers, because when I see experts or the godfather of business brokerage, love to kind of invite you. So Alejandro, if you don't mind getting Nick up here, because I think he was doing business brokerage before it was business brokerage or called business brokerage. Nick, if you don't mind saying a couple words. You're muted, Nick. There you go.
There we go. Sorry about that. I wasn't expected to be called on, but I'm happy to contribute where I can. Basically, you know, I've been at this now for 45 years. This is my 45th year in business brokering, and yeah, I've acquired the nickname of the godfather of business brokerage because I've been around since about the inception of the profession of business brokerage. basically, I've never been a residential guy. I'm a licensed real estate broker in 4 states, but I've never sold a house, never leased a property. I was able to get my broker's license because of my years of personal investing experience, and New York State accepted that as the equivalent of 2 years of real estate agent experience, and let me take the state exam to be a broker. But anyway, I've been very lucky in my life. I've managed to expand my company to 13 foreign offices now, and a total of 71 offices coast to coast in the States. Love business brokering. It's a great profession. I love the panel that you put together here. They're all experts, and people that are signed into this call, they will learn a lot, I'm sure, and you'll take away some golden nuggets that will enhance your current career if you want to expand from residential into business brokerage or commercial into business brokerage. It's a very wise move. So that's basically it.
Thanks so much, Nick, and always participate, but I'm glad, business brokers are here. And through Tawnya also, and I know you know this individual too, George Wellmer, with technology, we're always hearing AI, technology, different things that you need to accomplish. So George, were you ever a business brokerage? Because I have to ask, just thought, okay, you just built this great tech platform. So can you share kind of your background, why a tech business brokerage background, and what are you going to accomplish and do with this?
Yeah, so we started out like five-ish years ago, and we were automating valuations for banks, and brokers kept coming to us to be like, we don't have any tools, we don't have any software. So we ended up building software for business brokers, and that just really took off. And now we have close to 1,000 business brokers that are on our platform, which is Tupelo. Last year alone, we helped more than 1,000 companies transition. So on average, brokers that are using Tupelo are growing their practices, not only in the number of listings that they take on, but also in the number of agents that they have as well.
It's amazing, and I definitely know we'll go deeper. And then thank you, Rob Jones from the UK. This is different too with business brokerage, and I've just learned that not everything is licensed. And in business brokerage, I thought real estate was the Wild West after leaving Wall Street. But boy, business brokerage is even crazier. And Rob, as we got to know each other, franchise sales, franchise development, what is that? But share your background. How did you even get into this franchise business?
No, cheers, Jim, for having me. Yeah, I said business brokerage. I wouldn't quite call myself the Godfather, maybe the God Baby. I've been in it about 5 years now. My first foray was a franchise network. They recruited me into business brokerage because their franchisees couldn't sell. They just couldn't close deals. They were seeing enough people, but they weren't closing deals. They didn't realize, like with all the tech and everything that goes with it, business brokerage is pretty much just a people person game. If you're a good middle person, if you can facilitate the transaction, business brokerage is it. So yeah, that was my first foray. Fell in love with business brokerage. Then I started a business brokerage, a nationwide one in the UK, for an investor. And I did that for him, set that up, and then I decided to set my own up. And like Jim said, we specialize. We're a full service agency, so we deal with every sort of transaction that falls across our desk. But we have a particular specialism with franchises. So companies that are looking to enter Europe, we facilitate that. We're working with a company in the Netherlands now that's entering Poland. We work with quite a few companies that are entering the UK market, and obviously the franchise resales that go with it. So yeah, we have a bit of a specialism in franchise sales. But yeah, cheers, Jim.
Thank you, Rob. And kind of going back now with you, Tawnya, without giving legal advice, this is crazy. Sometimes it's licensed, sometimes it's unlicensed, some states are licensed, right? That is the biggest thing. So Tawnya, what's your advice, for, let's say, anyone trying to get into business brokerage, license, unlicensed, working on different fees rather than commission? Can you, without giving legal advice, I won't want to give you a disclaimer because you are a lawyer, but what would your suggestion be because of all this nuances and differences in the business brokerage M&A world?
Well, I would say the first thing, if you want to get into business brokerage, get some education. Join the IBBA, International Business Broker Association. They have some great educational courses. If you are in a licensed state like California, Georgia, Colorado, or even unlicensed states, I think Carolinas and Virginia are unlicensed states, but they do have a business broker association. So if you are in a state that has a local business broker association, join that. And oftentimes, many of them have agreements with IBBA where you join your local association, you get an IBBA membership, a full membership free. But I would say get some education, learn what it is, because business brokerage is very different. How you sell a business is very different than how you sell real estate. Key differences, there's really two key differences. One is business sales are confidential, typically. And so there are a lot of bad things that can happen if confidentiality is not maintained. Key employees can get spooked and quit. Vendors can change terms from net 30 to COD, which disrupts the cash flow of the business. So there's all kinds of bad things that can happen. So confidentiality is really key. If you're selling a business, we don't go put signs in front of the business saying this business is for sale. Second thing is that when you're selling real estate, buyer and seller seldom have a reason to meet each other. But when you're selling a business, a buyer and seller will always meet each other unless the seller is deceased or incapacitated. And so you have personalities. They need to get along. There is typically a transition period after the business transaction closes. There's typically a transition period of at least 4 weeks, sometimes longer, where they're going to be working together. There are a lot of things that have to transfer over from seller to buyer. If the personalities clash too badly, they don't have to be best friends, but they have to both be respectful of each other. And if they're not, and you have somebody who's super abrasive, the transition is not going to be good. And ultimately, those are the type of deals that oftentimes end up back in the courtrooms. So we try to stay away from those.
We do indeed. I think residential, commercial, any type of real estate, going to court is not good. And just to let everyone know, Tawnya was my instructor teacher when I joined CAB, the California Association of Business Brokerage. And I took this class because I said, you know what, if I'm going to run this other commercial trade organization and the referrals and leads, I said I wanted to open up to get more business brokers to join. So Tawnya, thank you so much. That course was great. And I still reference that big course material you gave us. It was fantastic. And through that, I got to meet George. George, so as you can see, having Rob here, it's kind of a global. Can you just tell a little bit about your business brokerage tech, how it works, operate, and really how does it connect? How does it help business brokerage from all aspects? Because I'm just learning everything about Tupelo and the capabilities.
Yeah, so we're in actually like pretty much every phase of a business broker's like workflow. So we actually help business brokers find their listing. We have marketing tools inside of Tupelo that helps with like drip campaigns, email marketing, things like that. You can use AI inside of Tupelo to query to find businesses that are in your area that might sell. Once you get that data inside of Tupelo, you can track it from like discovery all the way to listing agreement signed. You can use our e-signature software to send out documentation to them. We have AI in there to automate the valuation of automate the valuation for these business owners. We have data rooms, so you can collect financial statements from the business owners. We have AI to spread financial statements and do really the whole workflow. I should say I go in this for a while, but once you get a listing agreement signed, then the process is finding a buyer, and we even help with that. So if you're posting your listings on the various different marketplaces, we help with that. When buyers come into the system, so they inquire upon one of your listings, we automate this workflow to send them NDAs automatically, reminders automatically. And then when it comes time for a buyer to sign an LOI or letter of intent, we help with that as well. And then financing, if a buyer needs financing, they can actually pre-approve inside of Tupelo as well as the listing. So we're in pretty much all phases of the business broker's workflow right now. It's pretty exciting to see how many deals are getting done right now.
And for the audience there, is there a free version or is it a paid version? Is it behind a firewall lockdown? Is there anything that people could explore Tupelo?
Yeah, so we charge for our product. It's not free. It's a subscription based. So you sign up, we create your environment for you. and then lead like a training tutorial for you to help you understand the platform in totality. And then you're off on your own, getting deals and closing them and making money.
So one final one. So do you work with marketing groups, or do you have your own marketing connecting, or do you use, like everyone knows, biz buy sell, right? You gotta have to kind of work on that. So do you integrate with them and connect?
Yeah. So in terms of like finding new opportunities, we help the broker do that. In terms of reaching out to these business owners, we help with that. We have our own marketplace called Tupelo, so that will help you find buyers. If you want to use third-party marketplaces like BizBuySell, we automate the information that comes from there. So if a buyer inquires upon your listing from BizBuySell, we'll automatically add that buyer to the CRM. We send them what's called a buyer profile. So you're able to capture information on that buyer, how much cash they have, where they're located, what types of businesses they're interested in. And then all that is stored in the CRM.
Thank you, George. And Rob, kind of global international. Have you ever sold in the US or did franchises, or is it just in Europe? So kind of share about franchise development.
Yeah, just Europe. It's all been Europe and UK based. We've always been very busy with businesses going out of the UK into different EU countries. One of the things I've picked up recently, and this was lecturing actually in a university in Warsaw in Poland, it raises your profile. So now I've become a bit of a go-to person for businesses entering Poland, not just for the UK. So I'm working with businesses from, like I said, the Netherlands and all the rest of it. Post-Brexit, when we left the EU, that's just turbocharged the business for us. It's put a lot of difficulties in place for a lot of people, which for those of us who are dealing cross-country markets already has been a godsend for us, because now obviously people can't trade across countries from UK into the EU as easy as they used to. So now they are starting to look at opening up units inside the different countries, or the easiest way to do it is to master franchise that country and then bring on people on at a base. So it just takes away that cross-border problem and all the taxation that goes with it.
So Rob, do you have to be licensed, let's say in the UK or Europe for business brokerage?
Not at all. No, not at all. This is where it's the absolute Wild West, which is the good guys, which we try to be. We do very well, but then you're up against it's literally, the Lone Rangers style. They're coming in, and we worked with somebody. This was a franchise resale, funny enough, best will in the world. I don't know how your businesses amortize franchises in the US, but our amortization here is cost of franchise over 15 years, so it doesn't follow contract. And so if they're doing an intangible asset resale, it was coming in at 14 because of the turnover was very low on this franchise that we were doing. If it was a turnover-based valuation, it was literally 4,000. Adjusted EBITDA came in at just at 4,000. So our advice to this person was the valuation was going to be anywhere between 4 and 14. And we could always say realistically, we're going to land somewhere in the middle when we're doing these sort of valuations. One of our competitors valued the franchise at £30,000 off the same data, and which with the franchise is only selling for 17,000 anyway. That's the sort of, but their mantra in some of the competitors is we'll make a good living off the listing fees. So they're not looking at the sale element. They're listening. So they say to somebody, we'll get £30,000 for the business. It's going to cost you £2,500 to sign up. They're blinded and they say, well, this person's going to get me 30. So they sign up with that broker. And then 6 months later, they get the market's changed. It shifted. The borrowing's changed. But now they're tied in. So then they end up getting £4,000 for it, but they've been charged a fortune. So yeah, there's horror stories, but there's not even an association, a trade association for business brokers here in the UK either. So all the training isn't national. It's regional. And I'm lucky, but I think what Jim was saying, Tawnya, there with yourself, is I built our own manuals in our previous business brokerage. So our brokerage manuals are, they rock the floor if you drop them, but a lot of places it's a 6-page document. And they do it, and they said they're not interested in the relationship, they're only after the listing. So after what comes after the listing, nobody's bothered with, which is George, which is why I'm great you're on the call, because I always say, business brokerage is a people business, but you don't have time to deal with people if your tech's not right and you're not working efficiently. So it goes hand in hand. It's absolutely great you're on.
Well, thank you. And please share all your information, you too, Nick, so everyone can reach out. And this is what I've always saw, taking the course, Tawnya, with you. Thank you for that. Learning about everyone's tech, finding out how Wild West this was, because leaving from Wall Street to real estate, I said, oh my gosh, I'm not getting under all these scrutinies. They don't open my mail, right? They don't read my emails through compliance first for everything we did in Wall Street. But the problem is you do hear horror stories. I know my father-in-law before bought a liquor store in Koreatown and he got scammed, right? They stole all the inventory, right? Or the lease didn't pop up, right? The lease was short term and then it's not going to be renewed except for maybe 2 to 3 times the value. So that destroys numbers. So it's so important, to work with experts. But going back, George, with you, data, knowledge, what's going on to compare. Because I really hate when I hear this, especially in the US, where immigrants come here all cash and within their local community, they're telling them, oh, you should buy this, you should do this. And you get scammed and you do sign the legal forms. So sometimes when they do go to court, they really can't do anything. You signed off on it, right? You didn't hire the right person or talk to the right lawyers. So George, with this, is there a way to build a community and using data and referrals and maybe even checking for people to make sure, they're as good citizens so people do have a review? Because it seems like there's no rhyme, reason, or place to go.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely communities out there and support systems out there to help business buyers. I think talking to a professional broker out there is going to be one of the best things that a buyer can do, to just be like, hey, is this process normal? Would you execute the sale of a business like this? So building relationships in the community with like brokers that are active is a good way. I think going through, like Tawnya was saying, the IBBA and the regional chapters is another thing that buyers can do as well. But there's a ton of data out there on like how to acquire a business. That said, not all of it is accurate and not all of it is being produced by people who sell businesses. So there are a lot of, so I don't call them social media influencers out there that are like pushing the pipe dream of you can buy a business with no money down, right? And use the cash flow of the business to like live a lifestyle, or it's an absentee ownership business. So you buy a business, never work there in the day of the life and just watch it print money. That is not true. That is not true. But they're pushing this narrative out there. So you subscribe to their course and then that's how they make money. So while there are communities out there, like I would be careful to join any of them and really try to leverage the professionals that are out there. So the IBBA and the regional organizations out there.
George, I've seen those too. And I was like, wow, if it could only be that easy, because I did buy real estate. It's like, oh, don't buy real estate. You can't do this, the leverage. And we will, share a little probably on the finance with SBA. But yeah, you're right. Hearing these influencers thinking that you don't have to be around to run a business. Tawnya, how many businesses have you sold? And I know you're an expert and you always have the higher bar of with a legal background. How many horror stories, how many things you heard because they heard from somebody or they bought the company? And unfortunately, because there's not so many business brokers, you kind of get ripped off. Can you share some kind of how bad it could be with horror stories to everyone?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can tell you, I remember getting a phone call from a woman and her father had purchased a donut store for cash. And probably 2 or 3 months after he purchased a donut shop, he paid like $25,000, something like that. She said he got a bill from the Board of Equalization, which is the sales tax authority in California. He got a bill for like $18,000 in back taxes that hadn't been paid. And so California has very specific laws about successor liability. And the fact that they didn't use an escrow, they hadn't done a bulk sale, they hadn't followed the bulk sale transfer laws. which are required in order to avoid successor liability. And so she wanted to know, what do I do? And I said, well, you know, the first thing I told her is, I said, well, you need to check with your escrow company. And she said, well, they didn't use an escrow. I said, then unfortunately, there's just nothing that can be done about it. So guy paid $25,000 for this donut shop, and then ended up with $18,000 in back taxes he had to pay for the seller. So that things like that happen. You know, I remember another broker telling me, this didn't happen with one of my deals, but another broker I know, he said he had there was a buyer that, again, it was a small shop. It was like a small pastry shop. And it's because there was so much cash, the seller told the buyer, well, you know, just come in and sit and observe. And observation is one way to kind of find out how much money is going through the business or how many people are coming in on a regular basis. And so he set up, apparently this seller called everybody he knew, had them all come in the day that the buyer was supposed to be sitting there observing. And so they had like 100 people coming in and out of this shop. And what they would do is they would buy pastries and all that, and then take them around to the back door and give it back to him. And he put him, and so he'd bring out these trays from the back, like he had just baked these things and put them back in the case. And so they put on this whole show for the buyer, and the buyer buys this thing. And after the transfer, the buyer's in there for like a week, and he sees maybe 20 people in an entire week. There's no money coming in. And he's like, what happened? So, you know, my lesson for buyers is you never, ever tell the seller what day you're going to be observing, and observe from across the street or down the block or in the parking lot somewhere with some binoculars. You want to see how many people are truly coming and going from that shop if you're doing the observation.
And you know, instead of being a PI, you know, it's better to hire a reputable business broker that knows their business, that can do this, you know, to protect you, almost like you know, having a good lawyer, CPA. Because
Yep.
I know, oh boy, and I always say, even in commercial real estate, we were buying a property, and I can't believe it. The property management and everyone else was in on it. They staged the entire, I think it was over 100 units, to show there wasn't vacancy. So they staged units, and they actually put food in the refrigerator, because we did open it. We thought it was curious that there wasn't that much food, but they literally staged everything, you know. And there's some really crafty individuals, unfortunately, that really
Yeah.
try to scam, and you know, you find it in these little articles. But you know, it's not all bad, because I know, Rob, you know, I always thought in my head, and I loved business brokerage for this, there are ways you can make a tremendous amount of money through franchise or business scale, or taking a concept and scaling it. And I just kept on learning and understanding, having opportunities. One time I know friends were telling me about, and good or bad, Krispy Kreme, also Yogurtland, you know, boba shop. I mean, people were just telling me, hey, give me some dollars and you can be part of this master franchise or different parts. And they went wildly successful. Obviously, there's times to sell, but Rob, I mean, this is coming with you, new concepts, ideas. And that's why I said just in Europe, but selling from Europe to US, Asia to Europe or US, right? These are proven concepts, ideas that you can actually take a good idea, like Starbucks. You know, you just sitting there, Howard Schultz sitting there in a cafe going, hey, we should have this in America, and now look at it. But Rob, kind of telling everyone, as because you deal with, you know, concepts, right? That they build up and they start selling the franchise. Tell a great story, you know, that's something you saw starting and then got wildly successful.
Yeah, no worries. I can talk about one that I'm working on at the moment. For enough, it predates my involvement with them, but it's when you look at what they're offering, it's unbelievable. They've taken a crowded area, which is gym and personal fitness, and they've just turned it on its head using tech and using a lot of science. Now, the brand is in the Netherlands. And again, when you first look at the IM for this, you think this is just it's magic beans. When they talk, so they take a gym, and there's only 6 pieces of equipment inside this gym. It's 6 pieces of equipment, 80 square meters of real estate is all it takes for the gym. There's no changing rooms, there's no music, there's no sweat, there's no tears, there's no pain. It is just 80 square meters, 6 machines and a personal trainer. Now, what they do is you spend 20 minutes a week with the trainer, not 19, not 21, it's 20 minutes. And you don't go twice, you go once a week for 20 minutes. And over the course of a couple of months, it proves that you get stronger and stronger and stronger, and that's your fitness. And you do it in your own clothes. There's no sweating, there's no gym wear or anything. What they've proved over a number of years running this in the Netherlands before they exported it to the rest of the world was, if you did this over a certain amount of years, that they've tracked this now using their data capture, that you're actually stronger and fitter than people that do actually go to the traditional gym. You're obviously stronger and fitter than people that don't go to the gym, but that's not hard, is it? But you actually you get a better workout and you get a better life and everything through it. And there's 62 pages of science behind it. And it's just absolutely mind-blowing, because everybody thinks gym, everybody thinks, it's pumping iron. And, it seems to go through the world at the moment. In Poland, for instance, the fastest moving sector is gyms. Everybody's franchising the gym. That's turned into the Wild West. It's everybody that's got a weight in the corner has just franchised their gym, and they've, all they're doing is selling towels and weights and opening up gyms. But this concept is actually fantastic. It goes into office blocks, goes into apartment blocks, and obviously it's got street side curb appeal as well. And yeah, so that's the most groundbreaking one. I could talk to you about loads of different things at the moment that we're working on, but yeah, that's the one that just blew my mind. That you think you've seen everything, and you read through it and you think, I didn't even know. You've got this high impact training that's been around for a while, but these guys are just taking it to a different level.
No, I love that, because of vacant office spaces, adding amenities. Rob, we got to talk. That's why when I saw you in the UK and meeting friends abroad, that's why I think people should travel. You're learning concepts, ideas, food, just interesting things, and just attending these conference ideas, jog your memory, our ideas, saying, wow, Rob, you're going to get a lot of people to call you and say, hey, I want to set up one of those micro gyms, right? And hey, let's get the master territory on this call. Whoever wants to invest with Rob, let's buy a master US territory. You know all the stuff. But see, these are the excitement, right? These are the things that we all see. Maybe Tawnya, share something that you see, since I know IBBA. Maybe you could talk a little bit about this. It's starting to try to bring it all together, right? And I know you work on some of the governance, legal forms. Can you share, how the IBBA is kind of streamlining business brokerage around the world?
Well, can I? I mean, IBBA, yeah, they have a lot of courses that they've developed. The IBBA is really about educating brokers and helping brokers, and through that, helping the business owners, right? Because you need competence in your brokers. A business owner only has the ability to sell their business once, right? Once it's sold, they don't own it anymore, so it's done. And so it's really important that they be working with somebody who knows what they're doing and understands how to transact those businesses. So IBBA, yeah, I mean, they're constantly bringing in new vendors to help streamline the process. They're constantly elevating their education. They have podcasts that are available. They have webinars that are monthly. They have courses that they put on. And really, the goal is just to elevate the level of the business broker out there, give them the tools that they need, the education they need to really facilitate these transactions in a professional way, more as a trusted advisor than as just a matchmaker. I mean, in the past, business brokerage was you'd kind of put the people together, and then the broker could walk away and let the buyer and seller work out their own deal. But that is really not how it's done anymore. Now it really is, the buyers are looking for advisors, the sellers definitely need advisors, and as a business broker, you really do need to step up and be that professional advisor to those owners, to make sure that they can maximize the proceeds from their business sales. So, and IBBA has been a big part of that.
Yeah, and that's what I always love, and people don't realize how important it is. Small business creation, turning it into a franchise, right? McDonald's, many concepts. our business brokerage, and just, you don't realize it almost everywhere you go. It was a business, it was a concept, it was an idea that you put together and you scaled it. Or you can go to a different country, rip off and repeat, right? Do a little test. Rob, I'm going to throw a couple bucks to try to do this micro high impact gym. You know, I know a couple of spots I can get it cheap or free. And I know, hey, you know, a bunch of those, what is it, Equinox traders that maybe they buy in with us, right? And do something, right? But see, all these thinking and relationships is really interesting. But George, you see from everyone, since it seems like it's fragmented, unless you're with a trade group, you have data. Have you been looking and mining and extrapolating and figuring out data that you've been building?
We definitely collect a lot of data and analyze it. So like what are average multiples, time on markets, success stories of how brokers are finding new listings, what they're doing to like make their listing stand out on the various different marketplaces. We're watching all of that. It's kind of changing pretty quickly right now. I will say like the time on market usually takes like roughly a year, 9 to 14 months to sell a business. Multiples, we're seeing anything from like 2 to 5, depending on the size and industry and location of the business out there. Yeah, and then how business brokers are finding listings out there. It's really all across the board. Like everybody will always say that relationships are gonna bring the best listings to you, so your network. Although we see a lot of like success right now with cold calling and then email campaigns that are working as well. So really from like a business broker's operations, we're talking to, I'm pretty sure we talk to more business brokers than anyone in the world right now. So we have a pretty good understanding of what's working and what's not working.
You know, like I said, you know, who knows? There's always that, if it's not out there done, why don't we do it? You know, is always my concept and ideas of anything. And, you know, putting the puzzle pieces is what I always loved, and talking to all of you, learning so much is so important, right? Because this is something that you can still get very wealthy buying a franchise like Rob. Rob, you're gonna have a bunch of people reaching out to you to say, how much does this actually cost? Hopefully not 30,000 with back tax fees or stuff, right? But just finding a little location that's cheap cost. And maybe you are a personal you know, coach, right? Maybe you work out, that's your passion. And 3 to 4 or 5, you know, you rent it out, you just have a door code that people can use it. Who knows, right? There's always a way. And, you know, that's the exciting thing about business brokerage, M&A, and then it turns into investment banking, right? If you make enough numbers, enough units, and these experts here and Nick, you know, can really help you. I want to open this up for anyone with questions or ideas, because almost anyone you touch with your clients, usually if they're entrepreneur, they own their own company, their own business, or they work at corporate saying, you know what, there's a better way. Want to open it up. Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I have two
Or-
questions. How you doing, Tanya? How you doing, James? I'm better now.
Good,
this
good,
week.
good.
Hey,
Yeah,
Master.
please.
When you mentioned joining the local association, you mean like for the IBA? Do you mean joining like going to my local board of realtors and seeing if they have an association to join?
No, Board of Realtors is different. So, but like there is a Carolinas, Virginia Business Broker Association, CVBBA. Michigan has a Business Broker Association. There's a Midwest chapter of the IBBA. There is, Texas has a Business Broker Association, California has one, Arizona has one. So different states, you know, they're not in every state, but if where you're at happens to have a Business Broker Association, then you're best off to join that local association, as well as, you know, some of them you'll get your IBBA membership through there. Florida definitely has Business Broker Association, and so yeah, there are a number of them across the country.
Okay. And James, I'm gonna pick on you now. I wanted to ask this question last week, but just say like with someone, to my understanding, when someone comes with you saying, "Well, I have a buyer that want to buy this," but it's like a daisy chain where you got to go through multiple people. I just find them deals don't work. Like what's your advice?
Closer to the source, because the problem is, you know, if you're working on these, they're like, if it's too far removed and you can't verify, it's usually bad, because each step, anyway, as everyone knows on a deal, it's hard. And if it's not listed or shown or exposed, that's always a red flag to me. Because just because they say I'm open to selling it doesn't mean they have to accept the offer, that it's not binding to them. So I would always say these are red flags, Master. Granted, if you're willing to spend your time, because this is what you have, you're not paid with a paycheck, you only have time. A lot of, I would say, Tawnya, you will see this with M&A source, investment banker, private equity. Granted, they're larger deals. They're hard to find. So you're going to ask anyone, okay, I'll take a look, send me a P&L, and it has to make sense. But Master, daisy chains, most of the time don't work out, but depending on the size and the opportunity, you look. But a lot of times I verify it with the person. Now with LinkedIn, I know if they're credible or they just do this as a system, right? I always say go fishing, right? Because you never know what you're going to bait and catch. So, Master, a lot of times if you can figure it out, and I would even say this, I hate to say this, NDACAs, go ahead, sign it. It's how deep of a lawyer you have and how much money you want to spend fighting in court. It's not worth it, right? So you sign the NDACA, try to get some valuable information so you don't waste time. Because a lot of times you just waste time.
Jim, question?
Yeah.
Hey, so, kudos to you. This is just a fantastic phone call, fantastic Zoom, and thank you to the host and the guests that are speaking. I have a question. Well, first of all, before the question, just yesterday I added to profile that I have business brokerage. Why? Keith Andrews and I, we're selling a winery. It's a business, and I'm being asked to sell another one now. It's like, and Tom Crumpton keeps telling me, Eric, you got to take a look. So I did. So here we are on the call. Question. If you're licensed in one state, but somebody calls you in Texas and they want you to sell their business, what's that look like?
Tawnya?
Texas doesn't require a license to sell a business. So anybody can sell a business in Texas as long as they are not involved in the real estate. If you're involved in the real estate, then you need to have a Texas real estate license. But from the business standpoint, if somebody wants you to sell their business in Texas and you want to sell it, then go for it.
So Tawnya, I'm only limited then to the states that do require a license in that state. Otherwise, it's the wild, wild west, as we've been referring to.
Yes, there are 17 states that require a license. The other 33 do not.
Amazing. Thank you.
You owe Tawnya lunch or something. Send her a bottle of wine when you sell it. But this is the exciting thing of business brokerage, as everyone knows, when there's uncertainty, Wild West, there's opportunities, right? And that's always the big thing is, like what Rob just said, Eric, you can sell the business, but if there's a real estate involved or you bifurcate it, right? But always, I would say, get legal advice, talk to experts. And with George, get the best price, put it onto his tech system, right? All of these things converge, but I would just say, if you're listening to this, everyone, connect with all these individuals. This is the biggest opportunity, but it does depend on who you work with. It could be a nightmare, or, just your wildest dreams could happen, right? It all depends on who you work with, because as Rob says, it's relationships. So try to make friendships, relationships with the credible, high integrity business brokers so they can steer you and bring you to the right path. And especially if your family's doing this. And a lot of times people told me when they retire, they don't want to really retire. They want to buy like an Airbnb, a breakfast shop, something small. So they're making money in their retirement age, but they're not grinding the corporate 9 to 5 long hours. So Eric, I'm glad you brought out. Any other questions? Nick, do you have a question?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I wanted to add to the information that Tawnya gave to Eric, just as an add-on. Eric can, even though he's not licensed in Texas, because he doesn't have to be to sell a business, if he stumbles upon a listing that's going to include the real estate, rather than take the listing on the business only, he should, if he's licensed as a real estate broker in his own state, not Texas, he should cut a deal with a Texas licensed person to take the real estate portion of that listing and give him a referral fee, which the Texas broker can do. They can pay Eric, again, if he's licensed in his home state. Licensed people within each state can co-broker anything you want and come up with any commission split that you agree upon. So rather than just give up the real estate portion on a Texas listing, if you're not licensed in Texas, cut a deal with somebody that's licensed in Texas to take that real estate portion, as long as they can legally pay you a commission because you're licensed in your home state.
Yeah, yeah. And I would
Thank you.
just add, that's the power with the XP platform. That's so easy to do.
Exactly.
Thank you for that point. Great point.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Eric, for asking. And that's why, George, with the tech, while we're exploring growing it, since many of us, we control and run many different tech companies, from the CRM to data to marketing, putting this together, right? Because it is, and this is the great thing with real estate and business brokerage that we add to this, is the relationship plays, but the technology. And George, where do you see kind of the tech going in business brokerage right now?
Yeah, so I think what's going to happen, and what we see happening right now, is good business brokers out there are selling more and more listings, because the tech is freeing up time for them to build those relationships like Rob was talking about, and make them deeper, quite frankly. So you're constantly in front of your prospects in a meaningful way, and you're able to sell more listings. And then the data behind you is easily at your fingertips, and you're able to, do valuations and prepare marketing materials in minutes rather than what used to take days and weeks. So good brokers are going to be able to sell a lot more listings and make a lot more money if they're empowered with the right tech.
So maybe anyone here, start dipping your toes in, start, as Tawnya says, taking some courses, learning, because you can always buy your own product, buy your own business, or you can sell it, because I know in this world of business brokerage, there's not a lot, right? You think there's a lot in residential and commercial, there's a little bit more, but in business brokerage, I think it's a small fragment. And if you build, let's say, George, we're all talking probably TikTok, everyone's trying to sell something and it's pretty not accurate. But if you build that strong reputation, or if you already have that strong reputation and you have the work ethics and do it, this could be a booming, thriving business that you can scale. So I would just also say, any questions, last questions before I would say final thoughts and information of really how to get started with this, because I do see also this is the opportunity where you can stay in the game a little bit longer, because I see residential getting very tough. I see commercial transitioning, but business brokerage, I still see it still has some opportunities as long as you're willing to work hard, learn, keep your credibility. Any other questions?
Jim, I don't
April?
actually have a question, but I want to just kind of speak and just compliment Tawnya. I have been training under her for about 3.5 years now, maybe 4 years. And there's absolutely no business brokering deal that I am afraid to approach because of the training that she provides and just the building of confidence. So my confidence level is like up here. I'm always talking about, whenever I have the opportunity, not speaking about my limitations, but the strengths of the support from my partner. And it has taken me quite far. So Tawnya, we've got another deal that's coming our way too. I want to
Awesome.
talk to you about that. Actually, 2 more. Anyway, thank you, Jim.
Thank you, April. Look at this. You know what? A business broker sending referrals, learning the business. So you're not like April, getting more business. And like you heard from Eric, sometimes the real estate are involved, right? And sorry, we couldn't talk a little bit about finance. The finance guy wasn't able to show up, but you can get SBA loan, and maybe closing out, Tawnya, financing of businesses. Can you cover a little on that? Because I know you definitely have touched that about business
Sure.
brokerage finance.
In order to get SBA loans for business acquisitions, it uses typically the 7A program, SBA 7A acquisition program. Now, they have to have reasonable tax returns. They have to declare their income. And so a lot of times your smaller Main Street businesses, they're skimming cash and doing things and they don't show a profit. And it makes it very difficult to get any types of SBA loans. But your other smaller, lower middle market and so forth, if they have good books and records, then you should be able to get an SBA loan. SBA loans are, I always make that part of my process. I always want to see the tax returns, the P&Ls, the balance sheets before I ever list a business, because if they don't have something like you said, Jim, I mean, time is all we have. That's our most valuable resource. So if I don't have a 90% probability of selling that business, then I probably don't want to take that listing because at the end of the day, it's not going to be a good use of my time. So I look at those, and I actually have very good relationships with the lenders that I work with. And oftentimes I'll reach out to them after I do a recast. I'll say, hey, can you take a look at this and tell me if your bank would be interested in underwriting this for me? Because if you can go to market and say that your listing is already pre-approved by the SBA or pre-qualified rather, by an SBA lender, then you're going to have a lot more buyers interested in it. You're going to get a lot more inquiries in it. So at smaller deals, you're typically using an SBA 7A program goes up to $5 million. So loan amounts up to $5 million. They do have something in legislation right now trying to increase it for manufacturing companies. Anybody with a NAICS code starting in 3233, I believe, up to 10 million. So manufacturing would be $10 million, but everything else would stay at the $5 million cap. And that legislation is stuck somewhere. Who knows if it'll get signed, but that's what they're working on, because they're trying to get more manufacturing companies sold. Because here's the thing, and what you said about real estate slowing down a little bit, there's an entire baby boomer generation that is continuing to age. There is no slowdown. There's no way to stop that. They're continuing to age every day. And so these people that have built great companies over 30 and 40 years, their adult children don't want them because they already have their own careers or their own businesses. And so these people, in order to retire, need business brokers like us to help them sell those businesses, transfer that to somebody else, to a buyer who can keep those employees, continue to retain that business, operate it, grow it. But ultimately, it's really a great service that you're doing when you're involved in this business, because otherwise the business owner shuts down the business, all the employees lose their jobs, their families, it's just a mess. If you think about a company that's got 20 employees or even just 10 employees, what happens if the business owner just decides to close the doors because they're tired, they're burned out? Right. So there's a lot of components to what we do, a lot of benefits to a lot of people, to a lot of families that we never even meet.
Tawnya, thanks. I always have these other groups I'm speaking, so I'll probably put this group together to sell it to them, because I told them with this global chamber group, they're all businesses. So, but yeah. Tawnya, you may find this interesting with everyone else. There's middle market businesses, because a lot of them are cash flowing, 100 million, couple hundred, some of them 100 million, but at least a lot of them are smaller, million to 2 million EBITDA, right? Good businesses. And as you say, if they get older, how do they expand in America or, Rob, in the UK or in Europe? It's putting these puzzle pieces together. And, that's one of the things I love to do. But Rob, international finance, how does financing work in Europe?
Yeah, the UK is more the specialist, so I'll go on there and quote it more comfortably, but very different. We don't have SBAs or equivalents, so we have normal commercial finance. One of the deals that we've just done was for 2.4 million, and the commercial finance on that only went to 66%, and that was because it was a management buyout and a management buy-in, a bimbo. So we managed to max the maximum that we could unlock from that business was 66%. Normally we wouldn't be borrowing anywhere near it, which makes us, we're quite susceptible really to where George was going before with these clowns. You called them influencers, I'm going to call them a clown, that sit on the internet telling people they can buy a business for nothing. These £1 Charlies are the bane of our lives, because for people that are credible,
yeah,
we'll back them. We do a lot of deferred deals when we're talking to people, and the credibility, and we have, that's Tawnya and all the other brokers will have a black book of people that we've done business with before that will know that we can do it. We can then talk to the seller about deferred payments and certain amounts, and we can start preempting it because we have credibility. But yeah, we have the £1 Charlies that just plague us. Another, which, like I said, we're talking on the baby boomer generation, and not putting all these people out of work, is we have what's called EOTs, which is fairly new in the last few years. They're called employee-owned trusts. and it allows the owner to put the whole business into trust for the team. And it's very tax efficient for their exit because they don't get taxed on it. Whereas we've got capital gains, if you're selling your business for money, you're getting taxed on it. Whereas if you put it into an EOT, there's no tax, and then they get paid slowly over time. And obviously the employees then take ownership. So it's a bit more in depth our end than, you know, going and get a loan. We have to work with people to structure the deal. We have to know exactly what you were saying. We have to know who we're going to go to, because, you know, if somebody's putting a deal on in this sort of sector, I already know the two people that will commercial finance it for me, but I also know that they're not going to commercial finance over 50% of the valuation as well. So we start managing expectations there when people start asking, you know, with the deposits they need to be putting down, how we can leverage the, you know, the business to obviously unlock that money and borrow the 50%. But then also we're working with the commercial finance guys and the cash flow, because then once they've bought the business, then we're talking about what's inside the business that they can leverage to get their money back out quicker or to cash flow the business going forward. So we're a bit more in depth, and our commercial finance guys gives us nice commission for all this as well, because we work quite hard with them. So yeah, it's another bite of the cherry for us in the UK.
Thank you, Rob. Well, George, you're putting this all together. So you want to kind of close this out with tech, global tech, you know, from everything you're hearing, does it give you some ideas? Are you going to expand more or still stay the niche? And I know when we were talking about collaborating.
Yeah, I guess pressure's on to close out here. We actually, in terms of like the financing subject and getting deals pre-approved, like Tawnya was saying, you actually can do that inside of Tupelo. So you can get all your listings pre-approved that qualify. I'll call it caveat that qualify inside of Tupelo. I mean, the future is pretty bright, I think, for everyone out there in the space. There's so much opportunity out there, and now's the time to get listings and start selling.
George, Tawnya, Rob, thank you, Nick. You know, everyone asking questions. It's a pleasure. We always want to bring some good topics, what we see in the market, so you can plug in to help your business. I always say, stay in the game, put a good days in work, right? And then find that little opportunity that you can plug in, work with partners, and create that lifetime generational wealth. But as Tawnya said, right, the baby boomers, unless there's a franchise to help you stop aging or something else, or something that pops out, you never know. But, you know, like real estate, they can't just hold on past it. Somebody has to run it, manage it. They are going to sell it. So I'd say the future for business brokerage and learning from Rob, Tawnya, George, Nick on how to structure the deal. I think that is important. Giving it back, and a lot of times the loyalty with the employees, which doesn't always happen in big corporations, but in small family businesses, they're very loyal. The people are like family, is to structure the deal. So, but you do need experts. So I'd say Tawnya, Rob, George, Nick, put your information in, let people know how to reach out to you. And thank you again for being on Top Agent Nation Commercial Wednesdays. We look forward for everyone to come by, build a community together, and let's learn, let's share deals. So everyone, have a great day, great week. Bye-bye, everyone.
Excellent call, Jim. Thank you, Jim. Excellent.